I am Uchenna Oyali, and before I go into my presentation, I want to say one or two things about Nolu Emenanjo. I am the Uche that broke the news to Bon yesterday, not knowing that he did not know. He has said a lot about Emenanjo that I am asking myself, is there really anything left to say? So I'll just tell a personal story. On the 15th of November 2006, I was just 1 year and 1 day old in the academia, and I attended my first academic conference, presented my very first academic paper, and I observed that there was this particular man that everybody on the panel referred to as Prof. My paper had this very long title, Igbo Orature in African Literature in English, a stylistic study of Ezenwa Haito's The Voice of the Night Masquerade. So when I finished, Prof waited. Every other person left. He took me aside. He engaged my title. He didn't tell me it is bad or good. No, he was just asking me questions, and I was nailing myself. And at the end of the day, he asked a particular question, and in trying to defend myself, I cited a certain work written by Emenanjo and Ogbalo. Emenanjo and not Ogbalo. Emenanjo and it's on orature, and not Ocholon, another lady. So he now said, I and Catherine wrote that work, and I'm like, you and Catherine, are you Emenanjo? He said, I didn't know what he said next, and that was how our relationship started. I kept in touch with him. I mean, I was a little embarrassed defending myself and citing him to defend myself against him. But that's my story. But I'm happy it happened because that was the beginning of a very fruitful relationship between what I would call a father and a son, a teacher and his student. He didn't teach me in the classroom, but he taught me many of the things I know about Igbo linguistics specifically. I have a background in English language. I didn't do anything in Igbo linguistics apart from what I did in the secondary school. So it was his books that exposed me to the basics of Igbo grammar, and I'm very grateful to him. I also am aware of, when Bon spoke, he talked about how he engaged the Iroquois in the field. One of those Iroquois he engaged was Uchenna Oyali in his defense of standard Igbo. But in 1995, I read there was a work he published on Achebe's contribution to Igbo studies, and that was also how I got to know that Uchenna Oyali did not only contribute to literature in English, or to the English language, so to speak, but actually but also to the Igbo language. He might not have written so much on the Igbo language, but he has made a lot of impact that many of the so-called champions of Igbo studies do not do, professors of Igbo linguistics. So I've learned so much from Nolu Emenanjo. His last book, when it came out last year, took me to Port Harcourt to see him. I've been to his house a couple of times, and I was there last year to see him and to collect to get my own copy of the book. And I was happy I did. And we agreed that I was going to interview him. He was very excited about the interview. I want to revisit some of the issues he raised in his debate with Uchenna Oyali and a number of other issues concerning Igbo studies. Only for me to receive an email in our Yahoo group, the Linguistic Association of Nigerian Yahoo group, Emenanjo is dead, from Professor Zome Kurindimele. I was shocked, and it pained me, but I'm happy I got to know him, and I see it as a challenge to those of us that are still left, and those of us interested in Igbo studies, that we should emulate him. We should do a lot. We should learn a lot from what he has done. He didn't just say he would do something, he did it. He wrote a lot of books in Igbo, and I'm happy with what people like Yvonne is doing. And I see it as a challenge that many of us should do our best to write in Igbo. I think if we start writing in Igbo, the Emenanjo legacy will live. Thank you. So let me now focus on my paper, Bible Translation and the Expansion of Concepts in Igbo. This is actually a chapter in my ongoing PhD thesis at the University of Bayreuth. I'll do my best to make it not so academic. The presentation will take this format. I'll start with some background information, highlight my aims and objectives, talk about how I plan achieving that, and then focus on the concepts or some of the concepts that I think have been added to the Igbo language via Bible translation. Then I conclude. So we'll begin. This is an Igbo conference, so I wouldn't go into talking about who the Igbos are. Everybody, we all know that. So I'll start by saying that before the coming of the white man, the Igbos engaged in a number of economic activities. They had their technology, pottery, weaving of clothes, and so on. Education among the Igbos at the time was formal and informal. A lot of people engaged in, were apprentices, which I see as a form of formal education. Yesterday, Yvonne mentioned the Ekpe masquerade, Ekpe cult. There are a number of other cults like that, and membership into these cults is kind of formal. So training in these kind of groups is formal. But we also heard about Flora Nwapa learning a lot from what she heard people around her saying. So education was formal as well as informal. Religion, the Igbo religious practices were an integral part of their social and political life, which is one of the questions I have for the first presenter when he tried to distinguish the Igbo religion. Because I believe that the Igbo religion, or their practices were integrated. You couldn't separate the religious practices from their social life, from their political life, and every other activity they engaged in. And towards the end of the 19th century, in the second half of the 19th century, the missionaries arrived. First the Anglican, the CMS, and later the Catholic Church and other Christian religious groups. Of course, their goal was to make Igbos Christians. And one of their modes of evangelism was Bible translation. Now, my working title for my PhD thesis is Bible Translation and Language Elaboration. That's why I want to explain what language elaboration means. Language elaboration involves expanding a language to cope with use in wider domains. Language is used to express ideas, and ideas, concepts belong to particular domains. So when you start using a language to express ideas in a different domain, you are expanding the functions of that language. And there are quite a lot of linguistic and cultural implications, one of which is creating new words to accommodate the new concepts you are engaging in or you are trying to discuss. So I see Bible translation as a form of language elaboration. Christianity was a different religious practice, different form of religion, and it has a lot of concepts that are foreign to that we are foreign to the Igbo people. And translating the Bible into Igbo now meant creating words, Igbo words, to cater for the Christian concepts. So it is actually some form of language elaboration. To date, we have about 5 translations of the Bible into Igbo. The first one was completed in 1913 by the Church Missionary Society. That was the only complete Bible for a long time until 1988, when the Living Translation was published, the complete version. And then 2000, the Catholics published theirs. Then 2007, 2 other editions appeared by the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Bible League International. So what do I want to achieve with my presentation? I want to investigate how Bible translation has added new religious concepts. I'm focusing specifically on religious concepts here. How Bible translation has added new religious concepts into the Igbo language. Specifically, I want to examine how these biblical concepts have been represented in the Igbo language. And how do I go about this? I gathered a corpus of biblical or Christian concepts from the Union Bible. And my major criterion was that I looked at concepts that are distinctly Christian. So I gathered this, and then I tried to see how these were represented in Igbo. But there are also instances where some of these concepts had existing cultural equivalents which were ignored and new words created to cater for the concepts. I'll talk a little bit about this. And I'll also look at subsequent translations to see what they did. So I go straight into some of the data. I start with heaven and hell. the Igbos believed, I'll say believed now because today we believe that there is heaven and there is hell. Before the coming of the missionaries, the Igbos believed that when someone dies, he goes to their Nemo, the land of the dead. But today there is heaven and there is hell, which are Christian concepts. How did the Igbos represent this? So we have Eluigwe. Elu means up or above. Igwe means sky. So up above the sky or up in the sky is the creation for heaven. And then for hell, we have Oku Alamo, which is the fire of the land of the dead. I find this striking because Alamo used to be where all the dead go to. Now the fire that burns in the land of the dead is hell. So it is like demonizing whatever you believed in, okay? The Catholics have Okumo, actually. They didn't maintain Oku Alamo. They used Okumo. The Jehovah's Witnesses used Gehenna. They don't believe in hell. They believe that it is Gehenna. That is the Jehovah's Witnesses' ideology. Angel and demon. Angel is a messenger. So the other translations, four of the translations used Mozi, which is the spirit that runs errands. And then for demons, you have Mojo. But the Catholics prefer Moma, which I think is kind of therapeutic because since there is Mojo, okay, there should also be Moma. So if there's a bad angel, there should be a good angel. So instead of focusing on the message part, they are focusing on the goodness part. So these are the words created. Then sin. We have Mehie, Onjo. We should understand sin as, or I think sin refers to some kind of crime or offense to God. Okay? And in the Igbo Bibles, we have Mehie and Njo. I think every other Bible used Mehie. The Catholics used Njo. They have to be different, of course. Now, I ask the question, what happened to Nso? Because in the real sense of it, I think Nso is actually the apt Igbo cultural equivalent of sin. Because an Nso is actually a crime against a deity, an offense against a deity. Nsani, an offense against the land or the earth goddess, and so on. So I investigated all the different instances or contexts where Nso is used, and I observed that it always has something to do with a deity. So that's why I insist that Nso is actually the apt or the best cultural equivalent for sin. But Nso has already been given a different function. Holiness, which means hidden so. And so what happened to Nso? Its meaning was kind of extended. Since it has something to do with deities, you can also ascribe this status of sacred to it. So from sacrilegious to sacred, and from sacred to holy. So you can see the kind of evolution of the word Nso. So today we talk about Nso as if it has always meant holy. This, in my view, is a Christian creation. Now I come to the most controversial of all. I hope I survive this. The concept of God, and that's the supreme God and the supreme devil. Did the Igbos always believe in this? Some people say yes, the Igbos have always believed in this. Some say no, the Igbos have not always believed in this. I read most of these different views, and I choose to go with those that say the Igbos did not believe in the supreme God, and I have my reasons. Maybe during the Q&A, if questions come in that direction, I'll answer. But for this presentation, I will say that Chineke is actually a duality, Chi and Eke, Chi na Eke. These are two distinct entities. Chi has a number of meanings similar to Eke. I don't really know the difference between both. Chi could mean daylight, as in Kachifo, Chiefogo, Chiejigo, and so on. Chi could also mean what they call the Onowa, the belief in reincarnation, the person that lived before, that later came back again. So that is the second person's Chi. And thirdly, Chi could also mean one's alter ego. The belief is that as we are here, I am Uche, I'm a human being. And I have a chi or a counterpart in the spirit world living side by side. So every individual has his or her own chi. There was no chi, single chi for everybody. So if we have 100 people, we have 100 chis. So that is my understanding of chi from investigating or reading different Igbo sources. I do not accept the belief that it has always been God. The same goes with Eke, which raises the question of creation. I go with those that say that the concept of creating out of nothing is also foreign to the Igbos. And I've looked at the word Eke, and I go with Professor Mwaga, who insists that Eke, or the root K, refers to sharing, dividing, apportioning, and not to creating. And I've asked this question repeatedly, that if you believe that K refers to creation, give me an instance where K is used in Igbo to refer to creation, apart from Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Nambido or Nambo, Chineke kere eluigwe n'ụwa. Use K to refer to creation and not to share, and I might believe you. And finally, Ekwensu. Ekwensu was a heroic deity. Okay, Ekwensu was a heroic deity, Igbo deity. It was also a trickster deity. It was so good, and there's no perfect, all good or all bad character as far as I know. But it was so powerful and influential that a lot of people bore it as names. It was part of some names. It was also part of names of a number of communities. But it has been christened the devil, and over time, it has taken up all the baggages of the devil. That today, once you mention Ekwensu, everybody says to Fiakwa. In my village, we've got this festival called Igbo Ekwensu. It has been changed. It is no longer Igbo Ekwensu. And yeah, of course, we have to run away from the Ekwensu so that we'll be sure whatever we are suffering from is not from the Ekwensu. My last slide, so to conclude.
Yes, with the devil. Go ahead. I hope he gives you some inspiration. Go ahead.
All right.
1 more minute, sir.
All right, to conclude, everything that has advantages has disadvantages. Yeah, Bible translation has introduced has done a lot of good things to the Igbo people, one of which is expanding our vocabulary. So now we have more words than we did have, okay, before the Bible was translated. However, the child is told, Chi also means God. What does the child do? He transfers everything he knows about God to Chi, such that he forgets that there are other strands of meaning that Chi has. And over time, that part of our history is lost.